You don't need to be here anymore, Dad. It's time you went somewhere safer, like a nursing home." Those words hit me harder than any blow I'd felt in my 68 years. My own children, standing in my living room in Dayton, Ohio, telling me I wasn't capable of running my own life anymore. And for what? Because I refused to sign over my house and my savings to them prematurely? Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Henry Collins. I've spent my life building a modest home, running a small auto repair shop, and raising 2 kids alone after my wife passed 10 years ago. I taught Emily and Mark the value of hard work, the dignity in honesty, and the importance of family. I never imagined that the ones I raised would one day try to discard me like an old tool I no longer needed. That morning, my kitchen smelled of burnt coffee and toasted bagels, a small breakfast I made for myself before heading into the shop. My kids, dressed in crisp business suits, didn't even bother to sit. They stood like judges passing sentence. "Dad, we've hired an attorney," Mark said, his voice cold, precise. "Everything will be ready for you to sign tomorrow. It's for your own good." Emily's voice was softer, almost hesitant. "Please, Dad. It's safer. You won't have to worry about anything." I looked at them both, 2 grown adults, polished and prim, treating me like I was a child. My back ached, my hands shook, not from weakness, but from the shock of betrayal. "I've taken care of this house for decades," I said slowly, my voice even but firm. "Every brick, every board, every nail, my blood and sweat went into it. And now you want to toss me aside like I'm disposable?" Emily looked down at her shoes. Mark's jaw tightened. "You don't get it, Dad," Mark snapped. "We're just trying to protect you. You're getting older. You can't handle the bills, the upkeep, the taxes. It's dangerous. Dangerous." The word rang in my ears, as if my life was some fragile vase ready to shatter. I left the house that morning, but not out of fear. I walked to my favorite diner on Main Street, the one I'd been visiting since I was 20. The smell of sizzling bacon and brewing coffee grounded me. The chatter of neighbors, the clink of silverware, the distant rumble of a lawnmower, it reminded me of a life I had built myself. And that's when I made a decision. A quiet, calm, deliberate decision. If they wanted to push me out, if they wanted to erase me from my own life, then I would give them a lesson they'd never forget, because the inheritance they were counting on, the house, the savings, the little nest egg I'd left for them, they wouldn't be seeing any of it, not unless they learned the hard way about loyalty, respect, and the consequences of betrayal. And I had just the plan. The first step would be subtle. A few phone calls, a few signatures here and there, legal procedures, perfectly legitimate, but the effect, devastating. By the time they realized what was happening, it would be too late. The money would be gone, given away to strangers, charities, and neighbors who had always been loyal to me, not to my children who had turned against me. And when the dust settled, I would finally reclaim my dignity. But I wasn't rushing it. Patience was part of the strategy. Every move had to be calculated, every detail meticulously planned. And there was one detail that would tip the scales completely in my favor. A secret clause buried in my will that even my lawyer didn't expect to see the light of day so soon. I smiled to myself, sipping black coffee, listening to the din of the diner. They thought they had control. They were wrong, because soon everything they counted on, their inheritance, their sense of security, even their self-righteousness, would be gone. And I would be standing tall, untouched, while they faced the consequences of their greed. A week after that confrontation, the tension in the Collins household was palpable. I could feel it even from across the street, walking past my own driveway on the way to the diner. Windows were closed, doors locked, yet the silence itself screamed of hostility. Emily called that evening. "Dad, we just want what's best for you. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." Her words were soft, but her tone carried an edge, a subtle guilt wrapped in obligation. "Emily," I said slowly, deliberately, "you mean for yourselves, not for me. You're trying to control my life, my money, my home, all under the guise of love and protection." She stayed silent for a moment, biting her lip. I could hear Mark in the background, muttering about bills and upkeep, his voice sharp with impatience. "You don't understand," Mark said when he took the phone. "You've lived here too long. You've missed the chance to downsize, to live comfortably in a place we can manage. We're doing this for you." "For me?" I asked, the words bitter on my tongue. "Is that why you hired an attorney without my knowledge? Is that why you came into my house like I was a child, demanding I sign over everything?" There was a pause, a beat too long. Emily whispered, "Dad, please, just think about it. We don't want to fight you." I hung up, setting the phone down on the worn Formica countertop. My heart was pounding, not from anger, but from the clarity I felt. They had underestimated me, thought my age or my quiet nature would make me compliant. They were wrong. The next morning, I visited my lawyer, James McAllister, in his small office downtown. McAllister was a no-nonsense man in his 60s, his hair streaked with gray, and a demeanor that suggested he had seen every type of family betrayal imaginable. "Henry, I hope this isn't another one of your unconventional plans," he said, raising an eyebrow as I slid the folder across his desk. "Not a plan, James." "A response," I corrected him. "My kids think they can push me into a nursing home, take control of my property and my savings. It's time they learn consequences." McAllister adjusted his glasses, flipping through the papers. Trust agreements, deeds, and financial accounts, lined neatly in the folder. "You realize this will shake them to the core? Once you redistribute the inheritance, legally, they have no claim." I nodded. "Exactly. And the clause in the trust, if their actions are aggressive or coercive, they forfeit access completely. I want them to feel the weight of their choices before it's too late." He leaned back, a faint smile crossing his face. "You've always been meticulous. This is next-level patience. I like it." By the time I left his office, I knew my moves had to be timed perfectly. First, subtle nudges, small transfers, minor notifications of changes. Then, the big reveal. When the children finally realized they were cut out entirely, there would be no arguing, no appeals. They had signed themselves out with their behavior. Back at home, I poured another cup of black coffee, savoring the aroma of roasted beans and the quiet of my kitchen. The air felt different now, charged, electric, full of anticipation. I thought about the house, my life's work, and the sacrifices I had made. I thought about my children, the faces of betrayal, and how blind ambition can twist love into greed. And I smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of calm assurance. Because patience was on my side. My plan was in motion, and every step had been calculated for maximum effect. Soon, they would learn that trying to erase someone who built everything from the ground up comes with consequences. And when that day came, the weight of their arrogance would finally collapse. The following morning, I woke up before dawn, the Ohio sky still gray and heavy with early autumn fog. I brewed a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling my small kitchen, and sat at the table with the folder of trust documents spread before me. Years of planning, decades of hard work, and a lifetime of sacrifices came down to this quiet moment. Wasn't angry anymore, not in the way that burns you from the inside. I was calm, measured, precise. The betrayal had lit a fire, yes, but it had also sharpened my mind. I knew exactly what had to happen. Step 1. Redistribute the inheritance. I had already earmarked several local charities, a handful of neighbors who had always been loyal, and some community members struggling to get by. All legitimate, all legal. I made sure every transaction was recorded through McAllister's office, airtight, unassailable. By mid-morning, the first transfer notifications were being sent out. My children would receive them, and they would immediately recognize what was happening. Every cent of their expected inheritance, rerouted, gone, and out of reach. I poured another cup of coffee and leaned back, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car on the street. The calmness was almost cinematic, like a quiet before a storm. Then I picked up the phone and called a trusted friend at the county courthouse. "Bill, can you do me a favor? Just keep an eye on any filings under my children's names for the next few weeks. Make sure everything remains clean and above board. I don't want any mistakes." "Henry, you're about to watch a show," Bill said, chuckling. "You know that, right?" "I do," I replied, smiling faintly. "And it's going to be spectacular." The next day, the first reaction came. Mark called, his voice sharp and panicked. "Dad, what the hell is this? Why are my inheritance funds being redirected?" I sipped my coffee slowly, enjoying the controlled tension. "Because you tried to force me out, Mark. Every action has consequences," he shouted into the phone. But I stayed calm. I let him vent, allowed him to scream and sputter, while I quietly reminded myself why I was doing this. To teach respect, to enforce boundaries, and to protect my dignity. Emily called next, softer, almost pleading. "Dad, please, tell me this isn't true." "It is," I said gently, "and I need you to understand why. Not because I hate you, but because I love you enough to make sure you don't mistake greed for loyalty." I spent the next few days carefully monitoring the changes, ensuring all legal steps were airtight. I even enlisted McAllister to prepare a letter explaining the redistributions, citing the clauses triggered by coercive behavior. By the end of the week, the transfers were final. The house, the savings, the little nest egg they had counted on, it was all gone from their grasp. Every check, every dollar, every asset, redirected to people who had earned my trust, who had stood by me in small ways over the years. When Emily and Mark finally realized what had happened, they were speechless. Calls came in rapid succession, pleading, blaming, even threats. But I didn't answer. I let the silence speak louder than any argument could, and all the while I maintained my calm exterior. Because the real satisfaction wasn't in anger or revenge. It was in dignity restored. The final act, though, would come in public. A setting where everyone who had witnessed my children's entitlement could see the truth laid bare. Where I would no longer be a victim, but a man who had quietly, deliberately reclaimed control. And I knew exactly where and when that confrontation would take place. It was a crisp Saturday evening in Dayton, Ohio, and the town hall was buzzing with activity. The annual charity gala was in full swing, and many of the same neighbors who had always supported me were in attendance. It was the perfect setting, not only public, but intimate enough that everyone could witness the fallout. I arrived early, dressed in a simple navy blazer and pressed slacks, my hair neatly combed. I didn't need to announce my presence. Word travels fast in small towns, and it wasn't long before whispers spread through the crowd. Henry Collins is here tonight. My children, however, had no idea what awaited them. Emily had begged me not to attend, pleading for discretion, but I knew this was exactly where the lesson needed to be taught. Mark and Emily arrived together, confident and polished, expecting the usual admiration for their successful lives. They didn't notice the glances, the subtle nods from neighbors who knew more than they realized. As the evening progressed, I waited patiently near the refreshment table, mingling quietly with friends and acquaintances. Then came the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, stepping onto the small stage at the center of the hall. "I'd like to say a few words." The room fell silent. Conversations faded. Chairs shifted. And I began. "My name is Henry Collins. Some of you know me as a mechanic, a neighbor, or a friend. But I'm also a father who raised 2 children with love, sacrifice, and patience." I paused, letting the words sink in. Emily's face tightened. Mark's jaw clenched. Recently, I learned that my children thought they could disregard my years of hard work, my home, and my life, and force me into a nursing home for their own gain. They believed my age would make me weak. My love for them would make me compliant. The room murmured, glancing toward Mark and Emily. But I am neither weak nor powerless, and actions have consequences. I stepped aside, and James McAllister, my lawyer, handed me a small envelope. "These are the documents, publicly acknowledged. You'll see that all assets intended for my children have been legally redirected, according to the conditions in the trust." I held it up. Every dollar, every property, every inheritance has been redistributed to charities, neighbors, and people who have earned trust through loyalty, kindness, and respect, not entitlement. Gasps filled the room. Emily's eyes filled with apathy, tears. Mark's face went pale, the color draining like autumn leaves. You can't do this," Mark stammered, his voice trembling. "This isn't fair," I shook my head. "Fair? You tell me forcing your father from his home is fair? Trying to control his life is fair? No. You wanted to erase me. Now you face the consequences." Emily stepped back, ashamed, while neighbors whispered in shock. "You see," I continued, my voice calm but firm, "this isn't revenge. This is justice. You had the opportunity to act with integrity. You chose greed and entitlement instead." A woman from the back, one of my longtime customers, called out, "Henry, we've seen what kind of man you are. It's about time they learned the truth." I smiled faintly. That's when I knew the lesson was complete. The humiliation was public, the truth undeniable, and my dignity fully restored. Mark tried to argue further, but the murmurs of the crowd drowned him out. Emily's eyes met mine, full of realization, regret, and understanding. And as I stepped down from the stage, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of betrayal lifted, replaced with peace and certainty. The storm had passed, and for once, I wasn't just surviving. I was victorious. The following week, Dayton was buzzing with whispers and astonishment. My children, Mark and Emily, had become the subject of quiet ridicule among neighbors and friends alike. Word spread fast. The inheritance they had counted on was gone, legally redirected, and there was nothing they could do about it. At the diner on Main Street, I sipped my coffee while listening to the soft clatter of dishes. A group of longtime neighbors leaned in, lowering their voices conspiratorially. "You did it, Henry. Finally taught them a lesson. They won't forget it anytime soon. Good for you." The feeling was strange, part vindication, part relief. But mostly, it was peace. Emily came to visit me that evening. She stood at the door, hesitant, her eyes red from tears. "Dad," she began, voice trembling. I understand now. You were right. I didn't see it at first, but I see it now." I gestured for her to sit at the old kitchen table. "Come here, Em. Sit." She did, and for a moment, the room was filled with silence, the kind that feels warm and familiar. She reached across and held my hand. "I'm sorry for what we did," she said softly. "Mark, too. We didn't understand your intentions. We thought we were helping, but we were blind." I smiled faintly. "The past is the past. You've learned your lesson. That's what matters." Mark called the next day, sheepish and defeated. He tried to argue, tried to plead, but I remained calm, letting the legal decisions speak louder than any words. His threats dissolved into resignation. He realized the house, the savings, and the inheritance he had assumed were gone beyond recovery. Over the next few weeks, I noticed a subtle shift in the air. The neighbors' smiles became warmer. Emily spent more time visiting, helping around the house, and reconnecting with the small-town community. Mark kept his distance, humiliated, but slowly learning humility. The money, the house, the assets, they were never the reward. The real victory was dignity, respect, and peace of mind. I had faced betrayal head-on, and in doing so, reclaimed my life on my own terms. One evening, Emily and I sat on the porch swing together, watching the sunset paint the Ohio sky in hues of orange and violet. The air smelled faintly of autumn leaves and freshly cut grass. "Dad," she said, resting her head on my shoulder as she had when she was a child, "thank you for protecting me, even when I didn't want you to." I felt the warmth in my chest, a final, quiet satisfaction. Sometimes, love means tough lessons, Emily. You'll see that one day. Nathan, Emily's ex-boyfriend, was gone. Mark humbled, Emily wiser. And I had my peace. The betrayal had been sharp and painful, but justice, when executed with patience and calm, was sweeter than I could have imagined. I had lost nothing that mattered, and gained everything that did. Dignity, respect, and the knowledge that I would never again be treated as powerless. And in that quiet Ohio evening, with my daughter by my side, I knew I had truly won. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. If you've ever faced betrayal, we want to hear where you're watching from.